Famed record producer and entrepreneur Russell Simmons is being sued for rape. A former senior music executive and video producer at Def Jam Recordings, identified as Jane Doe, says Simmons sexually harassed, assaulted, sexually battered, and raped her in the 1990s. The lawsuit says the incident happened when she visited his Manhattan apartment for a work-related issue. According to the filing, Doe was responsible for Def Jam's video division at the time of the incident. She says her career was disrupted and derailed by her experience with Def Jam co-founder and then, quote, king of hip-hop, Simmons. Simmons faced another lawsuit for an alleged rape in 2018 before it was dismissed. And in 2020, there has been accused sexual misconduct by about 20 women. Simmons vehemently denies all of the allegations. This lawsuit was brought under New York's Adult Survivors Act, which expands the statute of limitations for sexual misconduct claims for 1 year. You know, I think that this is really something, Dr. Walker, when we look at the Me Too movement, as well as Russell Simmons, there's been a lot of talk around him, but there is this lawsuit. And I think that that actually makes a difference. Do you agree?
Yeah, this is like a slow moving train with Russell Simmons. I mean, these allegations that, as you noted, have been around for a while. And, he moved to Bali for an extended period of time. I know that. And there's certainly there was some conversation about why he moved to Bali. I'll let people fill in the gaps on that and kind of figure out why he moved to Bali. But these allegations, as a number of Black women, particularly who've worked in the industry, have highlighted consistently over the last few years of allegations relating to Russell Simmons. So I hope that, this individual was a victim of this kind of violence has certainly, I don't know if she'll have a day in court, but it's important that the voiceless have an opportunity to be heard. And so we just finished a segment as it relates specifically to Black women and violence not long ago. So I think it's certainly not surprising based, like I said, on the allegations we've heard, whispers, et cetera, and those in print for the last couple of years. And so it will be interesting to see in which direction this particular case goes. I also want to compliment, the state members of the Senate and the House, et cetera, in New York State for passing this law because it has opened the door and given opportunities to women who've been victims of violence.
They certainly have, Dr. Ali. And when we look at this, we talk about Russell Simmons in Bali. He's been interviewed out there, and he has said, listen, it actually was a different culture back then when we're talking in the 90s. And he says many other things. Of course, he says that he was innocent of all of these charges. He certainly wasn't as nice as he could have been, he says, but it was a different culture. And he has firmly denied all of these allegations. And I wonder what you make about specifically his comment about it actually was a different culture back then.
I disagree with that vehemently. The reason I do is because we as Black people understand whether it was 400 or 300 years ago when Black women were being raped and sexually assaulted, it was just as evil and despicable at that time as it is if it happened, just a minute ago. So when folks try and justify these types of behaviors, you know what is wrong. We're taught from our mothers and grandmothers and hopefully fathers and grandfathers of the things that you just don't do. So for anyone who tries to justify this type of behavior, then that also tells you a little bit about where their mentality is. We should also understand that sometimes people don't understand how serious this set of problems is. We almost have 500,000 people, women primarily, who are raped or sexually assaulted in the United States every year. And we understand that that is a conservative number. Every 68 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted in our country. 1 out of every 6 American women has been a victim of an attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. So for Russell Simmons or any other person who tries to justify that, we should understand the individual impact that's happening in that moment, but also how, if we don't address this properly, if we're not enforcing the laws, if we're not supporting those who have been through these types of situations, then it just continues to grow and grow because it's often in the shadows where people are ashamed of what has happened to them, and they shouldn't be. They should be supported. because we also know that when someone is sexually assaulted, when someone is raped, that it also increases suicide and other mental health issues that are associated with it. So it is time for everyone to step up, especially men. We should be teaching our sons and our nephews of how this is unacceptable behavior, and that if you do it, then you deserve. Let me say it again. If you actually create a situation where you cause sexual assault or rape, then you deserve to go to jail for a long time.
You know, Dr. Carter, Russell Simmons has said that he has taken many polygraph tests, passed them all, and he says that especially in the Me Too movement, we should believe women. It just so happened that all 20 of these women are lying. What is your takeaway from what you've been reading and seeing about Russell Simmons all the way up to this lawsuit?
You know, I think it's really tough when you see someone who has racked up multiple allegations of abuse and assault, and most men don't, right? Like most people go their entire life and not have this kind of behavior on their record. As Mustafa rightly points out, this was not a different time. It was a difference in terms of what we thought was acceptable, in terms of what we thought or who was believable or who was important. But in terms of basic human decency and respect, it wasn't that different. But, you know, people take the liberties that they want. And I think about Russell Simmons, and I really don't think about him in isolation. I think about him and all the people around him who likely heard of these allegations, who maybe have known some of these women, and still, because Russell Simmons is who he was at the time, as a media titan and a mogul, chose to remain silent and cozy up to Russell Simmons because of his power and what he might be able to do for them. And then I think about what we do know about him to be true. There was quite a big age difference between he and his first wife, Kimora Lee Simmons. And while by all accounts that relationship was consensual, I think it is still difficult for many people to wrap their heads around a 30-plus-year-old man dating a 17, just turned 18-year-old girl for all intents and purposes. And I'm not suggesting that age gap alone is or proves anything about his behavior in these alleged events. But I do think it points to a judgment or a way of perhaps thinking about girls and women that doesn't, at least to my mind, speak well of Russell Simmons, perhaps. And when I think about, all the other lists of men who have racked up these kinds of allegations, some of whom have gone to prison behind those allegations, I'm not sure what makes him special, because 20 allegations, one of them is bound to shake out something, whether it's guilt or innocence or something else. But I don't believe that all 20 of these women are lying. I mean, there's nothing to gain. History has shown women do not fare well for making these kinds of allegations, especially against powerful, wealthy men. And so I don't know what these 20 women would have to gain by manufacturing stories about Russell Simmons abusing them previously.
Dr. Walker, Russell Simmons said that at that time, he would have described himself as a hoe, I'm quoting him, and that he found himself in situations that he probably wouldn't find himself in today. When it comes to a lawsuit, and we think about Sean Combs and how he settled without a lot of information going out there because it didn't unfold in the court of law, do you think that that's a disservice, that we don't see these lawsuits unfold in the court of law and that it settles? And do you think that this is something that Russell Simmons might perhaps be thinking to do in light of what Sean Combs did and in light of the Me Too movement?
So first, I think that it's far too common for powerful men in certain industries, particularly hip hop, to talk about their alleged relationships, right? So bragging about them. So his point is consistent with hip hop. Me growing up in the 80s and 90s, and it today is as an adult hearing this kind of bravado. So that's the first point. Secondly, I think that once again, this is my point about those who, for victims, those who are voiceless. I think that, those individuals who have been victimized have the right to find peace. And certainly, I have to recognize my privilege as a man, and in which way these women can find justice, I wish them all the best. I also, your point about, what happened with Puff Daddy, I think it's an important one. Once again, we're talking about the same genre, hip hop, which many people on this panel we grew up listening to, and now some of those folks that whether it's hip hop or R&B or with R. Kelly, some of those folks that we listen to their music or produce, listen to things they produce, et cetera, over the years have, the clock is ringing, and some of them have been held accountable and will continue to be held accountable. But I think overall, this once again goes to my point about conversations among Black men, that we really need to talk about, what is important about the relationship and the way in which we value Black women. And that's a conversation we need to have on multiple levels, and be honest with ourselves, because I think it's really important that we do, because otherwise we're doing a disservice to Black women.
All right. Well, this is a story that we'll be following. And for those of you who are interested, there is a documentary called On the Record. Several of his accusers come forth and detail the allegations.
A new year for a new you. Curl Prep Natural Hair Solutions at curlprep.com is an amazing organic line for curls, locks, braids, twists, and even those wigs and extensions. Women, men, and children are loving this line. Look at this video and you be the judge. People line up to see this product in action at hair shows, and when they take a seat and try it, they don't believe it's their hair. Buy the products at curlprep.com. It works on all hair types. Use code Roland, that's ROLAND, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. Parents, remove the ouch. You will love this system because you can comb the product through your child's hair with your fingers. Seasoned saints are loving the product. It's all at curlprep.com. Use code Roland, lowercase letters, to get a 15% discount. You won't believe it's your hair.
I know this what I need. Give me that bass, give me that beat. Hit on your tongue, I can feel an explosion. I'll take another if we keep it going. Open it up, give a toast to the moment.